Exactly. All right, we're live.
Hey, people. Glad to be back.
Awake and alive and functioning.
Exactly. Your audio.
Please stand by.
Please stand by.
You will be hearing Dan shortly.
Yes.
We
In the
need one of
meantime-
those old-fashioned like screens that says please stand by instead of the
Yeah,
little
exactly.
Native American in the middle have a Spock or something.
Yeah. Or maybe like at the movies, we have like the dancing hot dogs.
Yes. I miss that.
Yes. We still have that actually, that retro intermission thing at the drive-in over here in Pittsburgh.
Ah.
Drive-in. We still have like the old retro,
We have
you
a
go to the
drive-in, but they don't
stand.
do that.
Oh, okay.
When my mom was a kid, they had playgrounds at the drive-in.
I remember the playgrounds. Yeah.
I was at a Lowe's recently when I saw the Monster Hunter, and again when they were showing the Fathom presentation of Dr. No on Sunday, and all I could think of was Fathom. Remember the little I'm sorry, Lowe's. Remember the little Lowe's song? Thank you for enjoying the show. Relax, and I don't know. And I messed it up, but you know, you remember that old tune
They
had.
didn't have that. We didn't have a Lowe's.
Does our YouTube audience remember that song? Because we
Yeah.
are live. Okay.
He'll
Can you
edit
hear me?
that
As
out.
we wax nostalgic, you know.
There
Yeah,
he is.
exactly.
Back in the days when we could go to movies, you know?
Yeah, and not rely on like by using other means.
Back in the days when you would go to a movie and there would be people in the audience. I actually got a private screening last week of The Monster Hunter. I was the only one in the theater. It was the last show, and it
Wow.
started at 8 o'clock, and it was great. I really liked that movie, and I think if it wasn't for a pandemic, it probably would have done very well.
Awesome.
It was actually more sci-fi.
Right.
I won't give too much away.
Hey
Can you
Dan,
hear me?
what's your audio status?
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we hear you.
We
Loud
can
and
hear
clear.
you. We are all audio.
But hi, folks, and welcome to Scotch Tracker Live. Joining me today are several co-hosts. I wondered if you could introduce yourselves.
All right. Well, my name is Maria. I live out here in Pittsburgh. I am the captain of the USS Stella Parada in Region 7 for Starfleet International.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Donahoe. I live in Kingsport, Tennessee, and I'm the CO of the USS Yorktown in
And
Starfleet.
I am also a chapter chairman of a Starfleet chapter, the USS Challenger for 34 years.
Chapter
and,
chairman.
Well, technically, captain.
Oh.
And I've been in Starfleet like forever, so
Yeah.
glad to be here.
Yes.
So yeah, great that you could all join me. On today's show, we'll be discussing diversity and inclusion in Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry once remarked, Star Trek was an attempt to say that humanity will reach maturity and wisdom on the day that it begins not just to tolerate, but to take a special delight in differences in ideas and differences in life forms. If we cannot learn to actually enjoy these small differences, to take a positive delight in those small differences between our own kind here on this planet, then we do not deserve to go out into space and meet the diversity that is almost certainly out there. How do you think racial identity is explored in Star Trek? And do you think it's positive portrayal? Or?
Well, we saw that from the very beginning with Gene Roddenberry's, vision of wanting to bring different ethnic groups together, and of course Lieutenant Uhura. And we know the significance of even Dr. Martin Luther King having had that famous conversation with her when Nichelle wanted to actually leave the show, feeling she wasn't given enough to do, and he said, absolutely not. You may not feel you have enough to do, but you're a face there. You're an important role, And as we saw, that role would develop further. Not probably as much as we wish it did, but
Right.
it was a good beginning.
Well, also, and
Right.
also look at Sulu too. That was also a great representation. I mean, look
Yeah.
at how Japanese Americans were portrayed. Like before that, like in what George Takei, like he has mentioned about like how how important it was for him to do that role, and like how he done other previous roles which he regretted because it fit into that stereotype.
Mhm.
Which role is it, Bob, that he talked about? I forget. He regretted doing a particular role because it was very stereotypical. And I forget. It was a movie.
Wasn't
Usually,
he,
frequent-
was he in one of
Um,
the Charlie Chan movies?
I think he was too young to be doing those because those were
Okay.
way back.
yeah.
I know he was in the Green Beret, but that was after he started with Star Trek.
All right.
Because that was the reason we lost him from certain episodes like The Trouble with Tribbles,
Mhm.
Right.
because he was filming that at the time.
Right.
I know he provided voices for some of the early monster movies. I think he might have even done a voice for Godzilla,
Right.
where he dubbed in, so he might have regretted doing some of those.
Right. But no,
I
like,
did-
I thought it was a good, for also just Sulu because like of what was going on in society, especially, like
And
you know,
Chekhov.
and Chekhov too. Chekhov.
And that was important to have a Russian
most
representation
definitely.
at a time when we were still within the Cold War.
Exactly.
Even if that first season he looked more like he was from the Monkees. But
Right.
Sure.
Right.
But
you almost can't imagine Star Trek without Chekhov, and yet
Right.
he wasn't in the first season.
Yeah.
But then
The,
again, the sort of American fear of their what would you say, their like enemies, or for lack of a better term, in the Cold War was exemplified by the Klingons,
Mhm.
allegorically,
Yeah,
in the US.
the animated series had a Native American character,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
which was different.
Right.
You didn't see that. They were very cardboard cutout in movies and TV shows at that time.
Yeah, well, I think just prior to that, I think there was a Native American in like the Star Trek comics was introduced.
yes, Bear Claw. Bear
Yeah.
Claw was in the. It was set at DC Comics had the rights at the time. It was post Star Trek 2, and it was interesting because Bear Claw had a prejudice against Ensign Konam, who was a defector from the Klingon Empire. He was the first.
yeah.
He was actually before Worf,
Yeah.
and was Starfleet's first Klingon officer. And it was a very interesting. It was well written at the time.
But I thought his sort of physical look was a bit like the Klingons from the motion picture.
Uh-oh,
Your audio.
we've lost
We lost
your
him.
voice. I remember one of my favorite animated episodes, and gave Uhura the best role that Uhura's ever had was in an episode where and I can't think of the name of the episode, but the crew had beamed down to a world where dominated by women.
Lorelei Signal.
Lorelei, yes.
Signal.
And Uhura took command of the ship because they had lost, all the men had lost their minds and were being absorbed. They were having their youth sucked away, like the mythical Lorelei. And she took command and beamed down with Chapel and female security officers, and basically saved the day. And I think that was like, we wouldn't have seen that in the live version, but in the animated episode, which was done in 73, 74, that episode, I don't know what season that show aired,
Right.
but we finally got to see Uhura, get really a powerful role, very gutsy. And
So keeping with the original series, how do you guys feel about the progression of like Chekhov, of Sulu, of Uhura, like into the movies? Do you feel that they like had like more of a role that they were more empowered to be able, or were they kind of just still kind of like the sidekicks?
I think we got to see a little bit more
Mhm,
of them. I wish we had seen even more so.
mhm.
And if we had seen a fourth and fifth season of the original, I would hope that we would have been able to explore that. We would have actually seen Uhura get a first name. We would have seen more of their own private, background, and a more Sulu centric storyline, things like that.
Didn't we get to see in Uhura's cabin in the third season, or is it the second season with oh, the woman that cried tears and it had the at her planet men would fall in love with her when she cried.
Ilana of Troyes.
Yes, because she stayed in Uhura's cabin and there was some
Yeah,
personal things on the wall of her African heritage.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's a little something. It's like throw her a sop.
right.
But I think it
Actually-
hurt women in that last season episode about what was her name? The lady that hated
Lester.
Kirk. Janice Lester.
Yeah. That still is a controversial, and that was unfortunately the last episode
Mhm.
of Star Trek shot. Turnabout Intruder.
Right.
And her reference to females not being allowed to be captain. And I really wonder, I mean, we kind of unconsciously retcon that when we see the episode because we know that's not true. But was Kirk just playing along? Was he just allowing her to say that and not pointing out that that's factually incorrect?
I don't know, because you didn't see women as captain till later series came out. I remember in Next
Right.
Generation, they showed a female captain. Everybody was like, oh, there's a female captain.
Well,
Right.
we know that, number one was a first officer. So
Right.
the fact that they would have an executive officer, clearly there would have been a female captain.
You'd think so.
So I mean, but really, when you look at it, was Lester basically not deemed psychologically capable of being a captain? Was that really the true reason why she was being denied? And
That might have been, but it didn't help playing with the guys in my neighborhood. Dan, say something.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
yeah,
Okay, so I recently watched that bit from Turnabout Intruder, where she says it's not fair. Your world, the starship doesn't captain doesn't allow for women, and he's like, yeah, it's not fair. He agrees with her on that. So it's not just as it applies to Janet Laster, and no, is it Janice Laster?
Janice, yeah.
But then as the world changed, when they made new series, they allowed women. So, which is only right. But at the time, they didn't allow women really a lot of positions in the army in
Oh,
America.
they didn't.
Yeah.
Well, like,
So-
I was also thinking about how, like, even in the cage, you've got like the women, and it's even remarked on in the episode, the women on the bridge of the ship, and in the form of number one. Major
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. I mean, clearly Starfleet had female captains.
But
you know,
Paramount or the powers that be said, nope, you can't have a woman as a bridge
Right.
officer.
Hmm.
But get rid of. Well,
You
she
can't-
was excellent. She was so beautiful.
Yeah. And the networks, brass,
Mhm.
that Gene had to make a compromise. It was either incorporate, one of them had to go, and it was either going to be the alien or the female first officer. And I
Right.
don't think his relationship had started with Mitchell yet, so he went with the alien and
Right.
incorporated those aspects of number one being a little more analytical and commanding into Spock, as opposed to because think about it, had they actually kept both Spock and number one in the show, we wouldn't have maybe seen as logical a Spock. We would have had a whole different backstory for the Vulcans.
True.
Right.
And number one would have been, it would have been interesting to see what would have been if, you know.
Yeah. And how, going back to the subject of racial identity, I was thinking about in Balance of Terror when Kirk says, like, leave your bigotry in your quarters, there's no room for it on the bridge.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
How there's that episode, let that be your last battlefield.
I love
Yes.
that episode. I love that
Yeah.
episode. I cosplay as a Sharon. You know,
Yeah.
I got a lot
Wow.
of compliments on that. Yeah.
There seemed to be like really quite a lot in TOS. Like I was thinking about the cloud minders. I didn't
Mhm.
actually realize it, but my dad actually reminded me that in A Taste of Armageddon, and Miniar and Vendikar are actually like from the same species, and they have a war between them. So yeah, there seem to be quite a few examples of sort of infighting or whatever in the
That Taste of Armageddon, that they just kept fighting because it's all they've always done, which reminds me of the situation in the world today. Several, it was what we've always done. And I thought, well, you can't erase the past, and you're never going to be even or equal, eye for an eye. So somebody has to stop.
And also
And-
it occurred to me like how Takuma talks about like keeping racial purity basically at the start of Discovery or season 1 of Discovery, whereas like the Borg are completely obviously inclusive. They're all about like assimilating other cultures into their own collective. So the differences in racial identity and how it relates to inclusion, I suppose, has been dealt with in varying ways in like Star Trek's antagonists, basically.
Well, they include everybody, but they don't give you a choice, and then they still change
Yeah,
you once you get in.
That's the kind of inclusion that you don't want, you know,
Yeah.
because they'll
Exactly.
assimilate anybody to give them no freedom, no choice, that they
And-
are all of the hive mind. So
And they
They're
replace
all
parts on them.
all
You know.
inclusive slaves, you know.
They'll take
Yeah.
your eye, they'll take your arm. I never
Mhm.
could understand why they did that, why they replaced you with mechanical parts.
So yeah, I was also remembering Eddington in DS9 when he leaves and joins the Maquis. He makes the point about, well, Federation's a bit like the Borg because they assimilate other cultures in a way. He makes a speech about it.
They let, but that, I don't agree with that completely. Not you, but what he said,
Yeah.
because they let you keep your own cultural things,
Yeah.
and they felt more enriched by it.
Well, to your point, but there's also like examples like the in Anson Row where Riker says, "Well, you take, you know, when Anson Row comes aboard the ship, can you take off your earring, even though that's part of her cultural identity?"
Yeah, but nobody gets to wear jewelry. Only Worf got to wear his, which I never really understood that, why he got to
The
wear the,
sash.
yeah,
Yeah, the sash.
Baldrick,
because everybody knew he was different anyway. I mean, he couldn't hide it.
Yeah,
yeah.
it'd be a little hard.
Yeah, he sort of stuck out. What they say, oh, turtle head.
Yeah.
But
The first season was,
Yeah.
what
when
was
they
with
had-
the poof, the regulation haircut? I liked him when he had a ponytail the best. It was long, but he still kept it pulled back and neat. And
yeah.
Right.
because even now in the military, you have to keep your hair a certain way if you're
Mhm.
going to serve. But that was only in Starfleet. If just in the Federation, though, she wouldn't have to remove her earring, nothing like that. And off duty, she could wear it.
Thinking about gender and sexual or romantic preference, my dad was today reminding me about metamorphoses in TOS, where like there's love between Zephyr Cochrane and the companion. It's not even corporeal. It doesn't even have a corporeal form.
I know marriage is like that.
Also thinking about TNG, the host, and the outcast relates to that subject.
Oh yes.
And
Mhm.
in Redemption, where it said that no women are allowed on the Klingon High Council, and I was reading, I read a quote from the writer Ron D. Moore, who was saying, I didn't really think about it being like a societal sort of topic when he wrote that line. He was just like thinking of the Klingons as traditionally patriarchal, but then that portrayal is also changed as track goes on. And also just watched The Kid Janitor, where there's like a third gender, and it doesn't. I realized watching the episode, it doesn't even it. The pronoun it applies, and it doesn't even have a name in that episode. So I thought it was an interesting exploration. And also similar to how Adira is portrayed in Discovery season 3, in the pronoun they being applied in that case, and then also not only Janeway becoming like the first captain in Star Trek history and first female captain as a series lead in Voyager, but then also just had Michael Burnham becoming the first female black captain in the show at the end of
Right.
the third season.
I'll
Well,
be
in
glad.
the show, although we had a female black captain in one of the movies.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can't think of her name, the actress's name now.
yeah. I know who you mean. It was in Star Trek for the Voyage Home at the start.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
And what about the
Captain
one in
Adira.
the first episode? It's the episode with the not lizards. They look kind of like little crab things, and they had the little wiggly thing come out of the back of your neck. But those captains had a
Yeah.
secret meeting. There
Yeah, in
was
the
a
first
female.
season of Next Gen. Yeah.
Right.
Good to see.
She was a female and black. I'll be glad when there comes a day where
Oh,
you just say
Charlotte Scott.
a captain. You don't have to say black or white or
Right.
Asian or whatever. It's just, oh, it's a woman, or oh, it's a man, or
Mhm.
Or in Discovery, it's an alien. You know,
yeah.
which
Yeah. Yeah.
know.
Well, in this week there was an article that was circulating social media about a physicist that invented something with a special laser or something like that, and the headline had to be "First female physicist" instead of invented this, instead of just saying physicist invented this for the first time. That was the real story, not that it was the first female that invented it, because it wasn't invented by a male either. It was
Right.
it was just the fact that it was invented. That was the news book.
Yeah, but
And
like,
yes, the physicist happened to be a female, but that's not the big deal. The big deal was that it was invented.
But I was thinking about traditionally, like in the sciences, like I was thinking more about specifically about like space exploration, how that's sort of historically undergone challenges in including females in like the space program.
Mhm.
And Nichelle Nichols, the hero actress Nichelle Nichols, being involved in that in Women in Motion that she was involved in. I read some about that recently, where she was pioneering female inclusion in the space program.
Mhm.
Space program.
Right.
Well,
And
things have
apparently there's going to
changed.
be a document. Sorry, apparently there's going to be a documentary coming out about that quite soon. I've seen a trailer for it. Looks quite good. Yeah. What were you saying?
Well, no, of course, I'm older, but I was a kid in the 60s and the 70s, and things changed. I could tell a big difference from when I had children. Like, I had no problem with my son playing with dolls. And he said, I'm practicing to be a daddy, because that's all he talked about besides G.I. Joe's, is that he wanted to be a daddy and have lots of kids. But when I was little, when we'd play games, I was the only girl in a large group of boys in our neighborhood for a long time. And I'd have to be the cook or run the saloon, or if we were playing cowboys, or I was the mom or the nurse. No matter what we played, I never had a leadership role because I was the girl. I hated that. The worst part was when they wanted me to be an upstairs lady, and I didn't know what that was. But in cowboys, you'd see Maria got it. You'd see the saloon girls, and they'd walk upstairs with the cowboys. And one of the little boys says, "You got to be an upstairs lady." And I said, "I don't want to." So I went stomping home, and I told my mom, and she said, "What are you talking about?" And finally it hit her, and they had the biggest laugh. But she said, "No, you're not going to be an upstairs lady." We didn't know.
Yeah,
yeah,
you didn't know that. Oh, you're the upstairs lady.
them the maid, but but yeah, when Morgan and Matthew came along, Morgan played boy stuff with Matthew, and then he played girl stuff with her. Or when I say boy and girl, the traditional. But
Right.
I let them play what they wanted. But it's becoming more and more okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you see like this progression, whether it be gender, whether it be sexuality, or like race in Star Trek. Like I kind of wanted to touch on the sexuality because I really am happy like with what it was going on in Discovery. I am a happy social worker when, especially when the character said, no, please address me as they, them, you know, to
Mhm.
identify her non-binary status. So I'm really happy because like because I ran a panel, the sociology of Star Trek, and one of the episodes that I covered in my panel was Outcast, because that really was like the first like more open about talking about sexuality in Star Trek, because I don't recall
Mhm.
anything in original series touching on that at all, you know. But so,
Oh,
but
really?
Roddenberry died before he could actually do this episode. He died in October, and like this episode was supposed, I think it was going to be a little bit more open about sexuality than it was. And I wanted to get your opinions on the beginning of that episode and the progression of like talking about sexual orientation in Star Trek. Is like how do you, are you happy with the progression about like the episode of the Outcast? Was it did it talk about sexuality well enough, or within the confines of the late 80s? You know, like was that all that they were able to talk about because of the given time period?
That was the episode with Melinda Kula. I'm probably mispronouncing her name. Better known from her time with the A Team, the
Yeah.
actress, the character who
Where they were genderless.
they were
Yeah, they're
genderless,
genderless,
and she
yes.
wanted to, and that was it. Flipped it completely. It was a really well done episode, in my opinion.
Mhm.
That
Made me cry.
made the point by flipping the whole topic of there being no gender and her wanting to be a gender
Mhm.
instead of it being, you know, uh,
Right.
not being the gender that she chose. I think it made it more powerful that way.
Right.
It's a shame he didn't see that, you know, because it was definitely a step forward for bringing attention to that topic.
Right. And like he mentioned in an interview shortly before his death that, you know, he was getting like letters and stuff, you know, from the LGBTQ community, you know, to have that representation. And I just feel sometimes that if he was still around for that episode, that maybe it could have been a little bit more like push the boundaries a little bit more. But I also think like given that time period when that episode aired, maybe that was as far as they could push it.
True, even if it was a
True.
syndication, they still had to be careful.
Yeah, exactly.
And plus, but it would have set the, you know, to go forward from there, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Baby
it was,
steps.
Little one episode, and then I really don't think like we got like for a gender identity, I don't really think we got like anything more until Deep Space Nine. Like it was like
like you say baby steps, but even then, like I was thinking of all the very first episode, like again, I suppose, of Star Trek in the cage, you've got like the Thelosians where they're being played by females, by women, but the
Yeah.
voices were dubbed by men.
Because they
Yeah.
wanted to be frail brainiacs that didn't do any
Yeah.
physical.
And then also thinking about like I think the story went through several revisions with several working titles that was like Ice and Blood and stuff like that. It was early, very early TNG, written by David Gerald, and David Gerald really sort of campaigned for it to be made. Where it explored, I think there was at least one homosexual character in it. I'm not entirely sure the plot details. I should look back on it. And it was an allegory for the AIDS epidemic or pandemic.
that's true. That was going on in the 80s.
yeah.
Remember the drug dependence one?
Oh, that
Yeah.
was a good one.
Judson Scott and Merritt Buttrick, you know.
Mhm.
I thought about like trying to run that episode in my sociology panel, but I was like, I gotta limit it. so
Yeah.
I didn't run that one. But that's another good episode talking about like drug dependency. And you know, I thought it was like that conversation with with Wesley Crusher, with Denise Crosby character, with Tasha Yar. I thought that was kind of like a cheesy, like, don't do drugs, kids. Remember
Well,
that little conversation? Like,
yeah.
why do people want to do that on my planet?
Mhm.
And I thought it was interesting in TNG. I hadn't really thought about this very much before today, but it did occur to me. Well, you've got like the sort of exploration of sexual preference with Data, and you know with even though he's an android, where he and Tasha Yar get together in the Naked Now,
Mhm.
and then like later in the series, like Data even has like there's one episode where he has a girlfriend and stuff like that.
Yeah, he
Well,
just
that was
wanted to
interesting
experience
too.
stuff. She didn't
Yeah.
make him.
No,
He wanted to be a real boy.
And he wanted to show he was fully functional. So
I knew that line was coming up.
I think it'd be rather
Sorry.
convenient,
couldn't
but
resist, but yeah.
Couldn't resist. I mean, I think that's one of the funniest lines in the
Yeah.
next generation. I am fully functional.
what was
But
the
also, like,
episode where
reminded me
Dr.
of Data.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, you were reminding me of Data when you were talking about the upstairs girls, because he's in what's the character with Worf and Alexander? They go on the
Oh, and the
they go
holiday.
on
I know what you're talking about.
Holo program, and Data appears like wearing a dress and stuff like that.
Yes, that was funny. Was it Fistful of Datas?
Yeah.
That was a good episode.
Yeah. That was.
Hilarious.
Star Trek always challenged me. It made me think, even though it was a TV show, they'd turn a topic on its ear, or they'd put it
Mhm.
on the other foot, let you see a different perspective. And, even as a kid, I got a lot of that. But you remember the episode where Crusher was in love with this man, and it's where we first got introduced to the trio?
Yes.
And
I
then
was going to go there too. Yeah.
okay, when the host died, it went into a female, and I thought they handled that real well.
Right.
She didn't say, "Oh, I'm repulsed," or "I think women with women is disgusting." She just said, "Boy, I'm not attracted to women,"
Right.
which is what you would do. You
Right.
don't have to yell at somebody just because they flirt with you. You don't have to
Mhm.
call them names. But
I thought that episode was interesting in the symbiont first goes to Riker, so it makes the point. I
oh
don't think
yeah,
it has to do with the gender in that case. I think it's because she's gotten used to the person that she's known, Odan, before
Yeah.
before he dies.
that would be hard.
Then thinking about yeah, I agree. Thinking about disability, it occurred to me like you've got Christopher Pike in the Menagerie two-parter.
Mhm.
I thought he's still like in active service, even though he's he doesn't even have a voice. He's got like one or two little
Yeah.
links on his wheelchair. And Jordan always I loved like the fact and the way that they portrayed Geordie LaForge, even though he's blind, like being in the helm at the helm of the Enterprise D,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yes.
guiding the ship. And also it's explored in like DS9 Melora.
Yes.
Yeah. I was just going to bring that up. Yeah.
And I was thinking about Voyager Year of Hell, where Tuvok was blind. But I think he actually sort of gives up his post after he goes blind, if I remember correctly. He's like, this will affect me too much in my
Mhm.
job.
But you could still offer other things. I remember reading a novel years ago about a woman that was a doctor, and she went blind, but she didn't quit practicing. She just changed her branch. She became a psychologist.
Mm.
And she said, "I'm still useful." So I like how Star Trek would do that.
Right.
That would have been hard for Pike, being so active and then being just
Yeah.
trapped in that machine.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be a living hell. That would be worse than death. And we also saw Nog when he
Ah,
had
Yes.
lost his leg during one of the battles with the Jim Hadar, and
Right.
his adjustment to it, and that it wasn't just the next episode, hey, I got my prosthetic. No, it was the span of several episodes, and his fear that would have been understandable because he's still a young officer, and it's like he says somewhere in one of the episodes, if this can happen to me, like he could lose his life. So that's when he was basically closeting himself in the holodeck,
Mm-hmm.
and where Vic basically says you gotta live life, you gotta get out there, you can't stay here,
Mm-hmm. Right.
even though it's
Good.
safer here.
Right. And recently, the latest disability that finally got represented, and I'm very, very proud of this, and I'll tell you why, is Spock in Discovery with his learning disability. And I am really proud of that because I'm a person with a learning disability, and to finally get represented, it's like, and it was his learning disability that helped solve the problem. you know, like to find the solution to like what the problem was with the Red Angel and stuff. And so like I was really happy with that, being a person with a learning disability, to finally be represented on the show. And I was even able to talk to Ethan Peck at Steel City Con and thank him for that. He was like, wow, thank you for letting me know, you know. And there's a cast member, I forget the name of the crew of the person who she is dyslexic and she has to memorize all her lines. Like she has like a little process, and he's like, I'm amazed by her ability. Like she deals with her dyslexia and still able to act just like perfectly,
Mhm.
you know. And like, you know, so like that's great that there's representation like in Discovery. But then also going back to like Geordie LaForge, like I really liked how they represented it, like Masterpiece Society. Do you remember that episode? It
Yeah.
was his disability that saved their society. And I love the line where he said, like, and just think, on your planet, I would have been terminated before I was even born. Because,
Yeah.
you know, I love
Right.
that line. And I just love the look on her face, like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that episode. I was like, yay.
It's good. Well, and don't forget Angel One.
Yeah.
They flipped stuff on that one where the women were in charge.
Mhm.
Mhm.
The ship I was on then wouldn't even talk about that episode. It made the men uncomfortable.
So I think like I'm just really happy with Star Trek. This, you know, continuously like with the disabilities, you know, they touch on it at least for like an episode, you know, like throughout, you know, and just like give representation, you know, to people with disabilities. You know, that's what I'm really happy about with Star Trek, and I hope they continue. You know,
Well, and the guy in Discovery that is in the wheelchair is in a wheelchair in real life.
Mhm.
That doctor that came with the Orions.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Mm,
he's got was it the ALS?
Yeah.
He has that. So he was a really I used to watch him in this. There was a sci-fi show called Jericho, kind of a sci-fi. If you've seen that, it was really
I
good about
remember Jericho. Yeah.
oh, I love that. And he was just a very active doing stuff, and now he's confined to a wheelchair. So, but at least he's getting to work and
Yeah.
making it more in the open. They
Mhm.
didn't hire an actor that's not in a wheelchair to do the job, which I like.
Yeah.
That is awesome. They also do that. I know this is a different show, but and the Mandalorian, they hired to do the Sand people. They actually hired the one actor said, no, we really need a person who's deaf who to help us do this scene, and they hired a who's deaf to be able to get it just right. So you know,
Mhm.
like I love it when shows do that. You know, like no,
NCIS New Orleans does that.
Yeah.
So, and it's, I don't know, to me, you know, because we don't have that physical disability and
Right.
it's dangerous.
Mhm.
If, you know, and it's a scary thing. So if people see this representation, it says, well, I'm not so abnormal after all. There's somebody in the world besides me that has this problem.
Right.
When I see somebody in a show with PTSD,
Mhm.
even though I'm dealing with mine, it still reminds me that I'm not alone. And I like to think that other people going through whatever it is go, I'm not alone. I'm there on television. There's other people like
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, exactly. And like
That
just going back
happens
to with Ethan
in
Peck,
Discovery 30.
and then just going back to that just very, very briefly with Spock having a learning disability. Like, no, we're not dumb people, okay? Because you're learning disabled, you're not dumb.
Right.
And it's the stereotype that unfortunately people with learning disabilities have. Yeah, that we're dumb, we're slow.
Yeah. And if it's something you can't see, if I
It's
can't,
something that we can't see, it's the invisible disability.
And
right.
it was so important to have Spock, you
Yeah.
know, be the one in this
Yeah.
case,
Mhm.
because we all know that Spock is one of the most brilliant characters in the whole Star
Right.
Trek universe.
Right.
So for him, I mean, I think it was very powerful to
Mhm.
show
Yeah.
this, you know, previously unknown aspect of the character, who
Right.
we knew to become the most brilliant scientist in the
Exactly.
Federation.
Yep.
But they'll do more. I hope they'll do more. I hope they will
Oh,
cover
yes.
people with, I'd like to see someone with Tourette's.
Right, that would be great representation. Like you talk about having a stigma.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a stigma beyond belief. You know, and like it's really hard for a person with Tourette's. You
Mhm.
know, very hard.
Yeah, I see it in real life. So I would like,
I see
because
it.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Mhm.
And all those other hidden things that people used to just say, oh, that boy's rowdy or that girl can't be controlled. If it's
Right.
things they can help and they
Mhm.
don't use it as a
Yeah.
crutch and they still become productive members of society. That's what kids need to see
Mhm.
and adults need reinforced.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I thought it's cool that earlier in Discovery's run there was a character also in a wheelchair. The sort of scene in the background, he appears in like Magic to Make the Famous Man Go Mad and some other episodes.
I remember that. Yes.
But also I thought it was quite cool that like what used to be known as multiple personality disorder is now known as dissociative identity disorder (DID) was sort of like allegorically represented in Voyager. With there's an episode where Seventh Nine, her identity keeps switching. So I thought that was interesting how they explored that issue.
That's scary to people. I would think my father has dementia and it's getting worse. And even though he has mostly he's aware, but his short-term memory is horrible. And when he realizes that he's forgotten something again, he has this look of terror on his face and embarrassment. And I don't know how anybody could serve in Starfleet once they get to a certain age. Maybe they need to do one about ageism. They sort of
Well, you
did
know,
with that one in Next
there was that
Generation.
episode, Counterclock Incident, an animated episode
Right.
Yeah,
where it's directly set, I think 75, which seems very young for
Hmm.
the 23rd century that it was set in. That then Commodore Ambassador April he and his wife had to give up their positions, or at least
Right.
he did, because he was 75, and 75 seems awful young. And for someone who's clearly very active, within his career, had been a starship captain and then became an ambassador. And she was a doctor, I believe, so.
yeah.
Well, like
um,
Sarek, what did Sarek go through? What was his
oh, he had
Bendai syndrome?
Bendai syndrome.
Yeah, that was that when Vulcans hit a certain age, right?
Right, and
Yeah.
and not all of them did it, I don't think, but he couldn't control his emotions and his
Right. Yeah.
feelings. So
And remember, Sarek had also had some kind of heart issue, the equivalent of a Vulcan heart issue, because in Journey to Babel, he had retired from being ambassador at that point because of his health issue, which McCoy ends up, performing the surgery for. And McCoy says to him prior to the main storyline, like when they came out of the shuttlecraft, and or maybe it was when they had that little party, with all the other delegates.
the Play-Doh hors d'oeuvres.
You're only 100 and something years old. That's kind of, basically that's young for a Vulcan. Why are you retiring? So, and then of course we know that Sarek, after that surgery, went back into being an ambassador again for.
I really liked him. As I got older, when I didn't look at him as an old man, when I became like a teenager, I thought he's really nice looking. Sorry, I know it's a side note.
Mark Leonard was one of the first celebrities I met, and he was such a nice man. And in real life, all his autographs, if you bought an autograph or a picture, would go to the Diabetes Foundation because he was diabetic.
Oh,
Awesome.
yeah.
That was actually his, own real medical problem.
Right.
And we lost him too soon,
Yes.
The actor that plays Ren on Star Trek Discovery is also diabetic, and like campaigns for like charities that help with insulin in the US.
Right.
That's our daughter Margaret was diabetic, and I had never had to deal with that before, so that was a scary thing when I became her mother, dealing with it. Of course, Tom researched it vigilantly, and he helped me, but I had to be really careful. I'd never had to worry about restrictions and diets before.
Yeah.
And stuff. So
it is adjustment. I'm a type 2 diabetic, so it is an adjustment. Yeah. So
yeah, definitely is.
yeah.
I don't know. Well, I know we're all thinking here right now. We're thinking about all the different things about Star Trek, but that was the thing Star Trek made you think if you watched it.
Yes.
I wish more people would watch it.
Mhm. Me
Yeah, I
too.
was thinking about how there's seems to be quite a few episodes that deal with advanced age. Like Admiral McCoy came to mind in the Encounter at Farpoint, where he's like 137 years old and he's still doing like active service
Right.
for the Federation. Also, like examples such as this TNG one, I think it's called Unnatural Order or something like that. And also, it seems a little bit similar to the Deadly Years, where
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
like
yeah, I remember that episode where he was kind of,
naturally.
yeah.
Because
One
I've
thing-
been,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
No, I was just like, just a side note. Is that DeForest Kelly's last acting job like on Farpoint? Because like I know he was like, it was near.
I'd say it
Helps in the
probably
comments, yeah.
was.
Yeah.
I think it was. I think I was just. I'm a huge DeForest Kelly fan. So.
He's my favorite.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love. He's my favorite original series. Yes.
Plus, he was such
Mine
a
too.
warm individual too. Both,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the cast just, it was universal. Everyone loved DeForest Kelly,
Yeah.
and within the cast and within fandom, he
Mhm.
was always so warm. He was always so friendly. He was really just like McCoy in being down to earth, sense of humor,
Right.
common sense. It would bring up, like he would just bring it back to reality.
And he was fatherly and brotherly
Yes.
Yeah.
and romantic at times.
Yeah.
And I have a funny side comment with that. Really touching. It's not funny. It's touching. The first time I met Nichelle Nichols, I had her autograph the original series like poster, and she looked right at DeForest Kelly. She says, "I miss that man."
Oh.
And I'm like, and that was before she had her health issues with the strokes and
Mhm.
stuff. So I wanted to tear. I still want to tear up. I was like, this how she's at. And she just like this lovingly put her hand on that poster and say, "I miss that man."
Oh.
Yes, and I'm glad I had that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, he always made me feel warm.
Yeah.
Well, remembered when you were speaking about Sadek-Bandai syndrome. I was remembering having it in on Memory Alpha before about like the writer Ronald D. Moore, that was saying like when they were writing the episodes with Sadek undergoing that, it was I think it really touched a nerve for them in the
Mhm.
writing staff with the Next Generation, how close some of that was to like what Gene Roddenberry was going through at the time as he was like aging.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard when I've experienced some ageism in SFI, but one thing that I liked on a personal level is not all series, but there was a Southerner, Dr. McCoy, but he wasn't this hillbilly yokel. That he was smart and he was social, and they didn't treat him like he was stupid. And Trip Tucker, he was smart and everything, and even though he had an accent, he wasn't the comedy relief on the show, which they
Right.
do that a lot with Southerners,
Well,
which I hate.
I guess he was at some points, like that episode, and in relation to gender and sexual preference sort of thing, the episode came to mind, Unexpected, where he's becomes impregnated.
Yes.
Yeah, I could imagine a man, being a man, that would freak you out. Like, I think we could agree that if men were the species that the gender that birthed children, populations would be very low.
It freaked me out when I was pregnant. I mean,
Yeah.
it is loving and moving and all that stuff too, but it's scary too,
Yeah.
because I'll make this real quick. When I had a cesarean, then when I was pregnant with Morgan, I was trying to explain it's going to have it, that there was a baby. That's when mommy was getting fat. And I said, when it comes time, they're going to take the baby out of my tummy. And of course, him being 3 years old said, like aliens. He thought, first thing he thought I was, like a chest buster. And I said, well, not really. And it won't hurt. It's not scary or ugly, but so I could just see a baby bursting out like. It's such a good memory. But yeah, I'd let him watch that movie and I shouldn't have, but
Oh, that's
I did.
hilarious.
I did.
That's awesome.
You know, don't know what group it was on, but it was on Facebook. Some woman didn't want her child to watch Discovery because it showed women kissing and men, she said, I want to protect my son. And I said, what makes you think he don't already know about that?
Yeah, exactly. You know,
And I said, and if you keep
It's
something
right,
from a
and-
kid, they're going to want to find out about it. I know I did. When my mama said, oh, you're too young for that, you don't need to know, I made it my mission to find out what that was.
Mhm.
I
But
thought some people had the same concerns about that with the DS9 episode Rejoined when that was aired.
yes,
Yeah, the first
First female.
female on female kiss, yeah,
Yeah.
which was another milestone, you know.
mhm.
Right.
Yeah, and thinking about the first male to male kiss on Discovery, but also like the what's often referred to the first interracial kiss in like world history, but it's not in Plato's Stepchildren in the original series.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it would be one of the first at least.
Well, it was the first for a big network, you know, in America. You know, it was
Well,
it was
people
still
have pointed out that there's an earlier interracial kiss even in Mirror Mirror, technically, between Kirk and Marlena Monroe. She was technically of a different race.
That's true, but she still passed for white, you know. I wonder how that did get past though, the captain's woman. That was a little racy for Star Trek, the captain's woman.
and the irony of that particular scene in Mirror Mirror was that it was anything but romantic because as Barbara Luna has said and William Shatner have both relayed, they were both sick at the time. They had both had bad colds or flu or something. And they were like, yeah, this was not romantic. This was
Yeah, but neither was the kiss in Plato's Stepchildren because they were like
They were
forced to do the
forced.
character, or,
yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think
They were
Kirk
like
would
a-
have had a problem. I think if anything, the problem should have been because she was his subordinate.
Mm.
You know, that should have been what would bother him because you don't get romantically involved with one of your officers. That would be bad.
I think nowadays, like William Shatner's been like myself and Michelle were really wanting to kiss for like ages before.
She was very beautiful.
Yeah.
Does anybody watch Star Trek Continues? Have you seen those?
Oh, wonderful series.
There was a race episode there where the planet was black and white. They didn't have color, and they
Mhm.
didn't know that there were people from the
Yes,
planet that they were fighting.
so
There were
cool.
already mixed races there.
Hmm.
And once it turned into color, they saw
Yeah.
that it would be like, you know, the Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, Maria.
Yeah,
Right.
They
Okay.
realized that, oh my gosh, they're already here, and this is my daughter, and this is my wife, and yeah, John Delancey played in that one. That was good. If you've not watched Star Trek Continues, you should watch
Oh,
that.
I'll definitely check that out. Definitely.
the stories were so well written, and they blended between the accurate sets, and they used the actual original series soundtrack to set the tone and the mood so well. You feel like if you could just forget that it's not William Shatner, DeForest Kelly, Leonard Nimoy,
Never
Scotty,
squint.
James Doohan's son actually plays Scotty.
Okay.
Um,
Just doing.
but otherwise, the characters are so well done, and it's so well written that it
It's a
shows
labor
that-
of love.
yeah, that it a retro feel to it. Feels like this is the fourth and fifth season we would have gotten had NBC not been so short-sighted as to cancel the original track.
You remember
This-
the Romulan commander? The
oh
female
my
role?
gosh,
Her daughter plays her in
Yeah.
this.
and looks identical. I was, I was like, how is this happening? Like this, it can't be her. And then I think it was, a fellow Starfleet member said, but that's her daughter. I was like, wow. And in one episode they explored the Orions,
Yes.
that we get to see a male Orion you know, which we hadn't seen since the animated series. And of all people, very appropriately, who plays the very strong looking Orion, but Lou Ferrigno,
Who has a disability?
who has a disability. Yeah, his hearing. You know?
Yeah, his hearing. Yeah, he reads very. I've got to meet him, and he reads lips very, very well. Yeah.
Yeah, they're good. So they really tried to carry on. So, oh, look at the doggy.
Oh, the doggy. Doggy makes his
Yes, well,
appearance.
making sure she doesn't do a little bark because she looked like she was about to. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's okay.
making a
We're
little cameo
inclusive.
appearance.
We're
Yeah.
all inclusive.
Yeah.
Hey, we had Porthos in Enterprise. We had a whole dog character, and we now have cat characters. You know, Spot.
I think we've had more cats than dogs.
Yeah, more cats than dogs. Spot, who seems to have changed genders. You know, remember he was originally he was a boy, but obviously, or you know, had kittens later on. So
Mhm.
something happened. Either Data, as brilliant as he was, missed something. You know,
Yeah.
I
So-
just
Sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead. I was just thinking out loud.
All right. Just earlier today, I was reading about an undeveloped plot for the original series that they would have gone to a planet where the there were basically two races, white people and black people, and the white people would have been like slaves of the black people. I thought it seemed quite interesting, especially for the time, for the 60s, even though it was
Oh,
undeveloped.
Oh, that would have stirred something.
one of the episodes I know that fans have not really liked, and for good reason, that didn't really come across very well. It came across very stereotypical. Was the Next Gen episode, Code of Honor,
mhm.
which had a lot of script problems. It had been written and rewritten, and different people were involved, and it just didn't come across very well. And
Beautiful.
the story could have been done so much better if it hadn't had those kind of similarities. Just, you know, the whole concept of honor being everything, which we've seen with the Klingons, but they mixed a racial element to it that made it come off, you know, understandably very, you know, stereotype. And it was a bad episode.
It was not a good episode at all.
No.
Nice
no.
costumes.
But
Yeah.
you don't think there's a racial element to the Klingons? Like so many Klingons are played by black actors.
Well, you know, Klingons are played by black actors. They're played by white actors. They, you know, there was an element of makeup in even the original Klingons, because remember originally the Klingons were patterned they were patterned after more like the Mongols warriors. That was said by Gene Roddenberry. So that was the look they were looking for at that time, and of course, then the look changed when they got an incredible budget by the time Star Trek: The Motion Picture
Right.
was around for you know, what was it to be Phase 2, you know, if it had been a series, and then they turned it into the motion picture. But
Right.
You remember the episode that was talking about the soldiers where they had been conditioned to fight, and then when they couldn't, and they'd been enhanced with drugs, and then when they couldn't reintegrate into society, they blocked them off. It was a Next Gen episode. I don't remember the name, but they asked the Federation for help because the soldiers were revolting. They'd been on a moon, on a prison planet, and one of them beamed aboard the Enterprise. And Troy said, you know, you made them what they are. You need to help them. And it was really, I guess, talking about soldiers who have PTSD.
yes,
What they were trying. That was good.
yeah, they needed to. They had done all of this, and James Cromwell was in that episode.
Right. That's right.
You know? And he was playing the bureaucrat that was like, you know, trying to get the Starfleet to help them. And, you know, it was turned on them to say, hey, you created this problem. You hyped these people up, and now you can't turn them down, you know, like you can't reduce their hostility, their, you know, their problem. So it was a good episode.
Yeah, you made the problem, you fix it.
And we also had that touching episode that brought Laxwana into the center, showcase when the alien played by David Ogden Stiers from MASH
Oh,
had to give up his life at the age of, what was it, 65 or
65. Yes, that was a very good episode. Another episode I covered in my panel, like the
Yeah.
dialogue between
It's-
Roxana Troy
It's one
and
of my least favorite episodes.
least favorite. Oh my God.
Really? Yeah, I'm
Really?
surprised.
Wow.
well, it's one of my least favorites because it makes me cry. I don't like to cry. I
Yeah,
cry enough.
yeah. I mean,
But the impact of like the viewpoints and the different societies, like that the dialogue between Roxana Troy and that guy, I loved it. Why
Six-
yeah,
It
I'll
seems
admit
awful
it, Kim.
young.
I can't go without tears without
Yeah.
that episode too, to see that. And I think Majel Barrett, when people sometimes criticize the character of Laxwana, I was like, did you see that episode?
That was
there's so many great episodes that feature Laxwana.
Yeah, I mean, she comes
reveals
across
her-
as this
when she takes her
flamboyant.
wig off with Odo, and Odo
Yes.
becomes the puddle and says, "You can be what you are." I think Laxwana, when she was written, and of course she was written over the top, but there were so many episodes where her character just worked in a dramatic fashion beyond the comedy element.
Well, she has many layers, and she was expected to
Yeah.
behave in a certain way.
right.
And I understand being over the top. I can be over the top sometime, but when she took Alexander under her wing,
Yes, it was a good episode. Yes.
that was good. And she worried about her daughter all the time. I understand that. And when she had repressed that memory about her other daughter dying,
Dying, yeah.
oh,
Yeah, there was some great episodes with Roxana Troy, and and
Yeah.
I just wish they just would have some more episodes, but they wanted to hit the comedy factor. I thought, like, between her and John Luke, and
yeah, she was just an old lady that was horny all the was sorry.
Well, she is in Manhunt.
Well, you bring up a good point. It's like, yes, when she originally came on in, I think, the first season of Next Gen, there was a comedy element. Majel was playing the Hello Dolly, the Grand Dame of the galaxy,
Annie Mae, yeah.
over the top, but funny, but over the seasons of Next Gen and even into Deep Space Nine, she became such a more multi-layered character. So
Right.
we saw other aspects, and it was wonderful to see, because here is a older actress that gets this kind of spotlight. Whenever Laxwana was guest starred, or Majel Barrett guest starred as Laxwana, you knew it was going to be an interesting episode.
Right.
like
they
that
just didn't throw her in for the sake of throwing her in. She was a story element, a catalyst for something that was going to be special.
Mhm.
Right. And I liked it because it portrayed a woman, even though she's older, she's still attractive. She still had a
Mhm.
sex drive. She can
Right,
still contribute. I don't like it when they think, as long as you've got a sound mind, you can still contribute. And then if you're physical able, let people still contribute and listen to them. Because even though older people might not be as technically hip, I'm talking about in real life, they still have a lot to contribute, and younger people should listen. And oh my gosh, I sound like my grandmother. But it's true.
Right.
I
And
was
that how
thinking
it goes
about
with the whole ageism that we briefly talked about.
Yeah, exactly. It was.
Going full circle, folks, in YouTube.
She's the poster child for the fact that there shouldn't be ageism. That she showed how
Exactly.
vital a character she was, and just
I was thinking about how it's explored in Star Trek Six Underscore Country with the scene between Kirk and Spock, where they're like, "Is it possible that we've outgrown our usefulness?" sort of thing.
Right.
Because I was thinking a lot about that film recently, with also like at the start of the film, you've sort of got Kirk with prejudice, saying racial prejudice, and he's like, "Let them die," talking about the Klingons. But then
Yeah.
by the end of the film, the leader of the Klingon High Council, who again actually is a female,
yeah.
is
Is it
like,
Boer?
you've restored, yeah, as it were, you've restored my father's faith, and he says, well, you've restored my son's. But
Yeah.
also thinking about that film recently, because of course the actor that played Chang recently died, Christopher Plummer.
Yes.
Right.
So
He was
sad to see
good.
that.
He chewed the scenery with that, but it was good. Him playing that Klingon.
Yeah.
Anybody's got an eye patch riveted to their head. I mean, that's just.
Yes, yes.
What if he got water under that? What would I always think of stuff like that. Maybe they sealed it first and did the rivets for effect. I'm talking
Yeah.
about if that was real.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a film that just like meant a lot to me growing up and stuff. So I'd just like to say condolences and thoughts to his family and his friends.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah. He
Mm,
was a great actor.
Mhm.
He was. We
When
were
you-
thinking he was in National Treasure at the beginning, and I wished he would have been in that longer.
When you think about it, Star Trek Picard as a series, like is a whole looks at the issue of the aging process.
Exactly.
We
Talk
see
about
that-
ageism. That and
Exactly. I mean, if that
Oh,
doesn't bring the subject of ageism into it, and that's one of the reasons I really appreciate that show, because we see that this is not just some sequel of Next Gen. We see that this is focused on Picard's life, that he is not in a place in his life that he was during even Nemesis. We see that sorry, now the cat's going to make an appearance.
Aw.
Um,
Hey, precious.
but we see that the humbling of Picard as a character. He doesn't even, he has to update his knowledge of how to navigate a ship, whereas he was known for the Picard maneuver, legendary navigation
Right.
as a leader, and has to show his ID
Yes.
to the guy at Starfleet headquarters.
Especially when his former
know-
ship was.
This is a legendary leader, an admiral.
Yeah.
Sorry about my dog.
No problem. No problem. Don't mind. Hey, YouTube,
I had
don't
him on
mind.
the leash. I thought they were going to be quiet today.
Yeah. Feed them treats, Bob. Feed them treats.
It's part of life. 20 years ago, I'd have had a kid running in here going, "Mommy, mommy, mommy."
Yeah.
So it's what happens. Bob, I've never seen that shirt before. I like the color.
What, the
I
Starfleet?
forgot the memo.
Yeah.
I'm wearing a Star Trek shirt.
I saw that.
I almost wore that one,
Oh.
a tan version, but no, my wife, I was going to wear that today, a tanner version of what
Oh, okay.
Marie's wearing, but my wife said, no, bring out something a little bit more vibrant, a blue, and there was a Starfleet short sleeve, and I said, well, I wore the pullover, a few weeks ago. She said, well, how about that? So the wardrobe today was provided by my
right.
wife, and it matched the color of the cap too.
Right.
So, but yeah, I've
Good.
had this for quite a while,
I got
I'm a
this one
t-shirt
in
hoarder.
99, I think.
Oh,
Slanted Fedora was still around, and I wear it rarely, and I wash it out by hand because I love the colors. That was before, well, a lot of the other
That's nice.
enterprises, but on the back it's got schematics,
Oh,
so I like that one. Remember Slanted Fedora cons?
I
They
do.
went bankrupt. Yeah.
Yeah. Geez.
Yeah.
I miss cons. Do you think we'll ever get to go to cons again?
I hope so.
Eventually, but it's going to be slow going. In fact,
Yeah.
I had to go to a routine doctor's appointment. I think I mentioned this to Kim yesterday, that my doctor, and I got all like, good news, but my doctor looks at me and smiles, and he's a pretty up-to-date, positive person, but he says, this is the way it's going to be from now on, as far as, seasonally, we're going to have the, like the flu shots, we're going to have the variant COVID shots, and, the washing your hands bit, and that's going to be a regular function. And I hope he didn't say the mask too, because
Washing hands should be without saying. You learn that in
Well, that should
kindergarten,
be,
but there's
yeah.
so many people that don't.
Right.
yeah,
Gosh.
that should have always been the case.
Yeah.
I've got that
Maybe-
poster. Everything I learned about life came from Star Trek, I've got
Oh, I
that.
used to have that too.
Well,
But going back
hopefully
to
we-
Picard, though, I just wanted briefly to talk about like like not only ageism, but just like when you were Bob, when you brought up the point about him having to show his ID, I was like, what a moment for his ego to get deflated.
Exactly. You know,
I
and some of us have, you know, like when you
Right.
think about what, you know, at a point of your life where you go back to something and the people that you used to, you know, whatever was it a former job or something like that, and those people are gone and all these young people are there and they don't know all the accomplishments, all the things that you had done, that you were a legend, you know. They're just looking at you like some guy, like, all right, who are you, you know?
Fossil dinosaur.
You know, so and then you feel totally inadequate. You're like, wow, you know.
Well,
but that's the
Dan and
progression of
Maria-
life sometimes, you know.
Dan and Maria are the young ones of this group here.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah.
well, I was thinking, well, hopefully we make up sort of, in a way, the absence of conventions by doing discussions like this.
Yeah, it
Exactly.
definitely supplements.
so much fun doing this. Thank you, Dan,
Yeah.
for bringing us on.
Yeah.
Yes, this
Thank
isn't
you,
work.
everyone.
This is fun.
Yeah. This is us just having this conversation, which apparently a whole bunch of other people are listening to, and we're grateful for them.
Yes.
We hope we're entertaining them, and that
Right.
You know,
as you're listening to us babble on, that you think, yeah, that's right, or well, I don't quite agree, or yeah, I thought of that too, you know. So
Dan,
Yeah,
could
and
somebody
you
suggest
can,
a topic? You know,
well,
like in the audience?
Yeah, we can discuss that later. And
Okay.
if to the viewers, if you think of any subjects you'd like us to discuss, you can post that in the comments. That would be great. And join us next time, at the same time next Saturday. Actually, on that day, we'll be discussing The City on the Edge of Forever for Valentine's Day.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Oh, good
Oh,
episode.
Hope
Good
you've
episode.
enjoyed.
And subscribe to the Scotch Trekker. Smash that,
yes,
Yes.
subscribe,
Subscribe and like.
as they
Uh,
say, smash that.
smash the like button.
Post in the comments any comments about what you really like about the diversity and inclusion of Star Trek yourselves. Bye for now.
hi.
They
Yeah.
want more dogs. They want more dogs in Star Trek episodes. No more cats.